The Daily Derech. We are walking the path of holiness.
Hey everybody, this is Rabbi Marcus Rubenstein. Welcome to the Daily Derech, a special project of exploring Judaism, the United Synagogue of Conservative Judaism, the Rabbinical Assembly, and Temple of Aaron. Today is Erev Shabbat Kodesh, the 1st of Elul, 5786, corresponding in the secular calendar to Friday, August 14th, 2026. This Shabbat, we will read Parashat Shoftim. Let's begin. Parashah. We'll do the 6th and 7th aliyah of the triennial Torah reading of Parashat Shoftim, our last day today on Parashat Shoftim. So let's do it. We'll get through today. We'll take a look at verses 17, 18, verses through 18 to 5. This is both the 6th and 7th aliyot. And so let's take a look at what they say. It goes like this. When he is seated on his royal throne, he shall have a copy of this teaching written for him on a scroll by the Levitical priests. Let it remain with him, and let him read in it all his life, so that he may learn to reveal the eternal his God, to observe faithfully every word of his teaching, as well as these laws. Thus he will not act haughtily toward his fellows, or deviate from the instruction to the right or to the left, to the end that he and his descendants may reign long in the midst of Israel. The Levitical priests, the whole tribe of Levi, shall have no territorial portion with Israel. They shall live only off God's offerings by fire as their portion, and shall have no portion among their brothers' tribes. God is their portion, as promised. This then shall be the priest's due from the people. Everyone who offers a sacrifice, whether an ox or a sheep, must give the shoulder, the cheeks, and the stomach to the priest. You shall also give him first fruits of your new grain and wine and oil, and the first shearing of your sheep. For the eternal your God has chosen him and his descendants out of all your tribes to be in attendance for service in the name of God for all time. So we really have two different ideas in this passage. Number one, the Torah scrolls, the unique Torah scrolls of the king. So we know that every Jew has the mitzvah to write a Torah scroll at some point in their life. Most people fulfill this just by writing one letter at some point in a Torah scroll, but really every Jew should have their own Torah scroll, technically. But it's not only this. In terms of a king, he should have his own Torah scroll, but he also should have his own a second Torah scroll written for him as well that we're told that he should bring with him. And we're going to talk more about that as in what Rashi has to say about that. We'll do a little bit of a deeper dive there. The second part that this Parsha talks about is the role of the Levites. The Levites are going through the religious leaders, but it's important to understand that they really had no property of their own. Everything that they received that they needed to live was gained from the temple and the sacrifices themselves. And so it was really the responsibility of the entire Jewish people to make sure both the Levitical priests and the Levites, who weren't necessarily priests but working inside the temple, were fed and given their basic necessities in order to live. So this is actually part of the way the Jewish people are set up, and very, very important. So let's go take a look closer, though, at the two Torah scrolls of the king. Well, Rashi specifically says on this line, i.e., two scrolls of the law, one that is placed in his treasury and the other that goes out and comes in with him. And interestingly, he then quotes Onkelos. Onkelos is the Aramaic translation of the Torah, very early, probably the earliest translation of the Torah. Onkelos, however, renders Mishnah by Patshegan, a copy. He thus interpreted the word Mishnah in the sense of shanen, repeating and uttering. He should make a copy and repeat it over and over again. Regardless, though, I think what this teaches us is that the Torah needed to be carried specifically with the king everywhere he went. And the first part of Rashi actually comes from a Mishnah. And this Mishnah is at least shown in Sanhedrin 21b in the Gemara. And it goes like this. And the king writes himself a Torah scroll for his sake, as stipulated in Deuteronomy 17:18. When he goes out to war, he brings it out with him. When he comes in from war, he brings it with him. When he sits in judgment, it is with him. And when he reclines to eat, it is opposite him. As it is stated, it shall be with him, and he shall read it all the days of his life. This Mishnah, which Rashi quotes, tells us that really, like all of the different things the king does, the Torah constantly needs to be in front of them and with them at all times, so that the king could constantly have like this physical reminder and remember the Torah always comes first, that the king is not the one who's really in charge. The Torah is in charge, and the king is always beholden to the Torah at every place. Most typical people just can make the Torah and sort of leave it in their house or leave it in a holy area. But the king actually needs to bring it with him. The Gemara actually goes on so far in Masechet Sanhedrin later on this page and actually says that the king needed to make it almost like an amulet that the king wore with him or carried around with him, so that the Torah can actually be portable. And so obviously the king wasn't walking around with a huge Torah scroll the way we would think of it now, but a small amulet so that the king really could bring the Torah absolutely everywhere, and that never he would be without the Torah even for a moment. And so that the king can always know where his authority comes from and knows which laws that he cannot abrogate. Halacha. Let's now turn to Mishnah Torah. We're on the section on prayer. We're going to go to, we're in chapter 5. We'll learn halachot 6 through 8 today. Today we'll take a look at proper place. And again, these are laws that are suggestions. They are ways in which we should be ideally praying, but they do not, if we don't follow them after the fact, our prayers are still considered kosher and accepted by God. So we're going to look at proper place today. What is implied? One should stand in a low place and turn his face towards the wall. So in general, we should try to find a low place, a humble place in which to pray to Hashem, and not a very high place. So there's a humility sort of part of this, but there's also a danger part of this. So obviously, when you're in a high place, you might be afraid you're going to fall, and you won't be able to focus on your prayers well enough. So he now is going to give examples of this. Also, one should open windows or doors that face Jerusalem and pray opposite them, as Daniel states, and he had windows open in his room facing Jerusalem. So in general, like, it's best to face a wall while praying, again, so you don't focus on anything else, except if you're near a window or something that happens to be facing east, then it's good to pray facing that window, because then you're facing Jerusalem, because then you're kind of being like Daniel in chapter 6, verse 11 of Daniel. A person should establish a fixed place where he always prays, a makom kavua. So this is important, right? Traditionally, if you come to a minyan every day, or regularly, or you go to Shabbat services every week, there is something very good at finding a fixed place to pray. The Talmud actually tells stories and kind of has a mythology that God looks for you in your place every day and gets upset when you're not in your place. So it really is a value to having a makom kavua, a fixed place to pray. That being said, I think today we hear a lot, don't do this because then it's unwelcoming if someone sits in your spot. And I think there's a much better middle line of, sit in your fixed place if you can, find a fixed place, sit there each week, perfectly fine, perfectly good, suggested as Rambam does here. But if someone's sitting in your place, don't yell at them, just sit somewhere else. It's okay, right? Sometimes I think we just need to just tell people the truth here of okay, be a reasonable person. And I think it's important to understand here, as you can say, if you're not standing in your fixed place during prayer, as we've seen from this Rambam here, it's not something that's going to prevent our prayers, but it's just an ideal thing that we should be trying to do. If you know someone usually sits in a particular place, you should not sit in their place. You should try to, if you're entering a new place, if you're entering a new synagogue or a new minyan you've never prayed on, be sure to ask someone there, does someone usually sit here? That's a good, courteous practice to do. Now, if someone doesn't do that and just sits down, we also have to be able to say, you know what, that's okay too, right? But if you're in the know, that would be a great thing to do. Okay, let's keep going. One should not pray in a destroyed building, nor should one pray behind a synagogue unless he turns his face toward the synagogue, right? This comes from many agadot that we don't pray in pray in ruins in the beginning of Brachot. Famous story in the Talmud about this. Always pray facing the synagogue, right? Not facing away from a synagogue or where everyone else is praying. And it's forbidden to sit down next to someone who's praying the Amidah or pass in front of him, right? Because this could be distracting, right? We should give someone their personal space, which is about 4 cubits around, which is about 6 feet. We should try to give people their personal space when they're praying the Amidah so they're not distracted during prayer. Similarly, one should not stand in a place 3 or more handbreadths high and pray, right? This is, again, not praying in a high place. And not standing on a bed or a bench or a chair. The idea of this, of course, is the fact that we're not going to be able to focus because we're going to think we're going to fall, maybe. Now, once a raised platform or something is 4 by 4 cubits, it's considered the minimum size of a residence, and therefore it would be considered okay and permitted to pray there. And certainly even if it's smaller, once it's surrounded by walls, there's no fear that you're going to fall from it, and the humility thing is gone because no one can see you. So it's not a big deal. You can pray there. The last halacha that we'll talk about today is craftsman, right? Someone who's working on the top of a tree, or in these days on the top of a building or something like that, or construction worker, or any place that is a little dangerous to be, or you have trouble focusing there while you're there. You should always come down from that place to pray the Amidah. You shouldn't pray the Amidah where you're working. Now, this is actually the opposite of the Shema. If it comes time for the Shema and its recitation, you actually say the Shema where you are, but the Amidah, you actually come down from that place. What's important, though, is this is if you're not being paid by the minute, right? If you're being paid by the time that you're working for, and your employer will lose money by you not working during this time of the Amidah, then you actually are permitted to pray where you are. But they need to say the shortened version, Havineni, right? That one paragraph longer, so we don't waste the time of the employee and thereby steal money from them in that regard. So very important sort of practical halacha, I think, for all of us. Agadah. Let's now turn to more agadot around creation and sort of what we can learn from it. This one comes from Bereshit Rabbah 1:6. It's a teaching of Rabbi Yehuda ben Shimon, who said, "He revealed to the prophets deep and secret things." This is Daniel 2:22 concerning the world's beginning, right? So Daniel verses, he revealed to the prophets deep and secret things. So we're going to learn today about what are these secret things that are revealed to the prophets and what is their purpose. Thus, Genesis merely says, in the beginning God created the heavens, but does not explain how heaven was created. Right, so what Rabbi Yehuda bar Shimon at least seems to be saying is that, like, the Genesis narrative gives us sort of a map of what specifically was created, but we actually don't. It never tells us how it was created. Obviously, he doesn't think that the world was set into existence in the same way. But regardless, we'll see what happens here. Who explains it? Well, the later prophets explain it. For example, Isaiah, he stretched out the heavens as a curtain and spread them out as a tent to dwell in. This is Isaiah 40:22. So again, and you're going to see this pattern over and over again in this Midrash, the Torah states what's created, but then the later prophets like Isaiah actually communicate how these things were created. And here, God stretched out the heavens as a curtain, right? That's the way God, like almost like a tent to dwell in. So this is in the famous chapter in Isaiah of Nachamu, comfort, O my people, that God was there from the beginning, and therefore God can forgive you. So again, another example, Genesis 1:1, God also created the earth, according to Genesis, but never explains how it was created. Who explains it? Job. He said to the snow, become loose earth, and presently the loose earth stuck together. This is actually in the mouth of Elihu, who's speaking to Job during this time. He's one of Job's friends. They're arguing, they're debating. And again, Job is explaining to his friend Job, were you there in the beginning when, God was creating all these things and did all these incredible things? And last episode of this, Genesis, God said, "Let there be light," but does not explain how the light came into being. Who explains it? A Psalm 104. Thou didst cover thyself with lights as with a garment. This is Psalm 104. Perfect psalm for today, Rosh Chodesh, right? This is part of the Rosh Chodesh psalm we say, Psalm 104, that God clothes God in self and light, and that's how the light came to be. Now, I think this all shows, like, the general idea is that, like, God sort of gives the map in Genesis of what exactly is created, and prophets later reveal it. But it's also interesting to analyze sort of where these incidents come from. Like Isaiah, we talked about, is that moment of comfort my people. God is able to sort of tell the secrets in the beginning of time, and therefore God can forgive you, right? Job is again, the verse about the earth is Job challenging and saying, what is God doing here? And Elihu saying to him, well, were you there in the beginning? You don't understand the mysteries of the world. You need to give God more credit than you are at this moment. And then finally, the Psalms verse really is talking about how beautiful sort of the world is and how everything is animated by God. I think what this all shows us is that we actually experience how the world is created, not by reading the book of Genesis, but by actually experiencing the world, by experiencing beautiful nature, by challenging God as Job does, and for demanding God's grace and God's acceptance of us in tshuva and return, and believing that we can come back. Doing all these things actually allow us, living with God in a real way, actually allow us to actually experience how creation is actually created. It's actually one of the ways in which we reveal the secrets of the God. Otherwise, the text of the Torah itself is just like a map. Okay, it tells us what it is, what to do, but we don't really experience anything. And the only way we actually experience God's creation or God's power or all these things and learn the deepest secrets of the Torah is through experiencing it, through having an intimate relationship with Hashem in real life. And I think that's why one of the reasons this midrash is so powerful.
Well, that's it for today, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to the Daily Derech. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to email me anytime at rmr@templeofaaron.org. Thank you so much for listening. There are so many people to thank, and you can look in the show notes for that. And also, if you want to know and see any of these texts in the original, we actually have that too. You can actually find that in our episode description. So look in each of the episode descriptions and you'll find that information right there. Thank you very much. Have a great day, everybody.